We'll be keeping you company all the way through until iftar time in Johannesburg this afternoon. Of course, it's been a busy week on the local front, internationally as well. You are aware of the dominant headline this week, and that, of course, the developments in Iran. We'll get to those in a few moments, but just a quick look at your iftar times in the major cities. In Johannesburg, it's at 6:35 p.m. Durban, 6:25 p.m. Port Elizabeth, 6:49 p.m. and Cape Town, 7:17 p.m. All right, we are actually a bit delayed this afternoon, and that, of course, because of that interview earlier on between Advocate Shabnam Mayat and several individuals speaking about very important issue there in Myanmar. And if you missed that, you can, of course, catch up on the various platforms, Facebook and YouTube. But right now, let's move on and get straight into it. Our segment for this portion of the show, and that is the week that was. Of course, we are going to be joined in a few moments now by our colleague over at the articles department online team, and that is Muskaan Ayesha. I believe she's having some difficulty reaching us this afternoon. But we'll be looking at some of the headlines that have been this week and the dominant stories. We know we're going to be looking at stories locally as well as globally. And just to give you a quick look at what stories you can expect, of course, she will give us some more detail about these stories in case you missed them during the course of the week. Of course, it does get busy and things do get ahead of us. But that's why we're having this segment this afternoon. And that, of course, is to discuss the different details of these stories. So the first one we'll be looking at this evening or this afternoon is Fatima Patel's plea to Muslims. So you might be aware of a Muslimah by the name of Fatima Patel, and she's been incarcerated in Westville prison in Durban for the past 6 years or so. And she has made a plea to the Muslim Ummah. She feels abandoned and hopes that the situation can be alleviated. So I'm hoping we can unpack this a little bit further with our colleague Muskaan Ayesha. Then we have a few developments within the African National Congress. So you might be aware that next year as a party, they're going into their national elective conference. It happens every 5 years or so, and they will be picking a new leadership. So the current contenders, obviously this is not out in the open yet. I mean, none of it is official, but there are some rumors that Patrice Motsepe, he is making a bid for the ANC presidency. But he has dismissed those rumors and says he has no interest in joining politics and he wishes to continue in business. And we also look some developments with SANDF deployment set to take place in the coming weeks. Then globally, we have other issues to look at. We have the latest developments in Iran, and we have some conflict between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So there's been some fatalities there. Then we also have the cancellation of prayers at Masjid al-Aqsa. That's amid the war in Iran. So we'll be looking at that a bit closer and finding out what's happening there. I see our colleague has just joined us, Muskaan Ayesha. Assalamu alaikum. Shukran for joining us this afternoon.
Walaikum salam. How are you?
Muskaan, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Shukran for joining us. Welcome to Salaamedia. How has your Ramadan been thus far?
Jazakallah. How are you doing?
I'm well, alhamdulillah. I'm quite pleased that we finally get to connect. We've actually been planning to have this segment for the past few weeks now, I think 2 weeks, and it just didn't happen, but we're finally getting to connect. I hope things are
Right.
well on your end.
All good here. Been waiting since the beginning of Ramadan for this.
Mm. All right, so we have quite a bunch of stories to get through this afternoon, and it has been a busy week. But I think we can start with the story with regards to Fatima Patel. She's been incarcerated at the Westville prison. I believe you might know a bit more that you can share with the listeners this afternoon.
Right. So I feel like it's quite a significant story for the Muslim community because it's something that was supposed to be a state issue and it has become a religious and communal issue, especially since she has gone ahead and appealed to the public, especially the Muslim public, for moral and financial support while she awaits the start of her trial.
Mm. What are
So
the circumstances behind her incarceration, though?
So at the moment, her story is it's a sensitive issue because she's facing some serious charges related to terrorism and kidnapping, and this is exactly why it's sparked such intense debate because her prosecution is the way that they're putting it out there. It's looking like she's being unfairly targeted.
Mm. And what's her specific plea to the Ummah at this point?
So she's appealing specifically to the Muslim community, and she's tapping into a broader concern about the weaponization of anti-terror laws to marginalize us Muslims. And her supporters are, in that sense, arguing that she's being persecuted instead of prosecuted, and they're calling for a united front to ensure that she's receiving a fair trial, regardless of the gravity of the state's claims.
Mm. All right, and then we move on to our next story that's regarding some developments within the African National Congress. Patrice Motsepe dismissing rumors of a presidential bid. Can you tell us about that?
Okay, so it's been a heavy weekend for accountability in South Africa because we've seen a major milestone in the state capture saga as Vincent Smith, a former high ranking ANC member of parliament, was officially sentenced to 7 years in prison.
Mm. What what are the details around that imprisonment?
Uh, so it's a big moment for South African law because it speaks of political corruption. And Smith, he was convicted for accepting bribes to influence government oversight. So while it is a victory for those who have fought for years to clean up the state, it's also a reminder that many others that were involved at that time have not faced a similar sentence as yet.
Yeah, and I think many of the campaigners are hoping that this is just the first among many more to come because many individuals have been implicated in that state capture report that was
Absolutely.
released by the Zondo Commission. So I think we'll be keeping some tabs on that and see where that goes in coming weeks, months, years, even perhaps. It has been quite a while since that report, and I think many are saying that the wheels of justice are quite slow to turn, but indeed they have begun. All right, and then there was a rather sad moment this week for South Africans, especially people who follow any of the political developments, and that, of course, the passing of Musia Lekota.
Right. So, Messiah has been seen as a giant, especially in the political field. He is the founder of COPE and a former ANC chairperson. He passed on the 4th of March this year. I think he leaves, not I think everyone believes that he leaves a huge legacy behind because he is known for his political rebellion. He was one of the first major leaders to walk away from the ANC when he saw that the party was beginning to slide into corruption. And this was back during Zuma years. So he was the one that broke that monopoly of the entire team being corrupt, and he stood out for that.
Yeah, I actually just recently found out about this and have been fascinated by his breakaway from the ANC. So, for those who don't know, Musia Lekota was actually the Minister of Defense in the early years of South Africa's transition from apartheid to democracy. And when he eventually left in, I think it was 2008, that was a rebellion against Jacob Zuma's election. And it's quite interesting the way his views diverged from those of the ANC and the ANC that became in the years after that. So quite interesting. I think it's a life quite worth looking into. He did spend some time on Robben Island, and Democrats in South Africa are mourning his loss. All right, let's move on to some of the international headlines, the stories that have been making the news globally. Um, of course, the dominant one has been Iran. What's going on there?
So the US and Israeli connection in Iran has entered its second week, and there's been massive escalation in combat. The President Donald Trump has rejected any mediation efforts. He has taken to social media to demand an unconditional surrender from the Iranian government. He stated that the US will only stop its strikes once a new acceptable leadership is established, which proves that the whole objective of his campaign is to have someone that is going to adhere to what he says in authority in Iran.
And also related to what's going on in Iran and the broader Middle East region is the cancellation of Friday prayers at Masjid al-Aqsa. And I think this is quite um, disheartening for Muslim listeners out there.
I feel like this is a perfect example of weaponizing religion and psychological warfare, especially for a group of people that have depended entirely on their religion and the hope that they have in Islam. To take this away from them, especially in the month of Ramadan and especially the Friday prayers, is something that is very intentional.
What was the reason that the Israeli authorities gave for clamping down on Friday prayers?
So the Israeli authorities have cancelled all the Friday prayers because they are speaking of security concerns following Iranians' attacks, and they have closed it off to actually all worshippers of all faiths. They argue that issues in Iran and the escalation of the wars might cause security issues for them.
Mm. I think we'll be watching that as well, the broader implications of the war in Iran and the Middle East. And just looking a little bit eastward of Iran, there has been some sort of conflagration between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Right. So this actually started towards the end of February, from I think around the 21st of February, and then on the 27th of February, Pakistan said that they're declaring an open war. This has followed months of militant attacks that they've blamed on the Afghan Taliban. Both of the nations have started launching major air and ground operations against each other. And while Pakistan is accusing the Taliban run government of harboring militants from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan who use Afghan soil to launch terror attacks inside Pakistani territory, the Taliban have consistently denied these charges.
All right, what will you be looking out for in the week ahead as these stories unfold?
Well, I think there's a lot to look out for. There's a lot of tension locally as well as internationally, especially with Iran and USA at the moment. So I believe it's going to be another few weeks that we're going to be witnessing these things.
Mm. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Shukran so much for your time, Muskaan Ayesha, journalist at Salaamedia. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, that was Muskaan Ayesha. She's a journalist over here at Salaamedia. You should actually head over to the website and check out some of the stories we've been putting out in recent weeks and months. Of course, many people may not know this. I know we are quite prominent on Facebook, on YouTube. You may have come across the interviews that we put out there, but we do have an online team as well that or we try to put out stories on some of the latest developments as they are happening during the course of the week. Of course, we do write these articles, we speak to interesting people, and we put it out there hoping that you will read and enjoy. I know not everyone is into the audio visual side of things, and some people just like to read at their own pace and time. And I'm actually one of those people. I much prefer reading the news over consuming it via the live streams that are all too common, podcasts as well, very common. But yeah, some of us just like to slow down and we just like to consume our news over coffee or whatever it is. Obviously, we can't do that really during Ramadan unless it's in the evening. But we do like to slow down and read our news over watching it or listening to it. So if you're one of those people, please head over to salaamedia.com and see some of the stories that we put out there. And you can catch up with all the news that you need to know locally and globally by visiting salaamedia.com. The time is now 5 minutes to 6 o'clock. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with the show. Please do stay with us.